Okay, there you go. Okay. So the difference between the two roles are the administrator role. This is a role that is used as a queue. More than one actual user is actually can administer the actual cases in the system. And then the all assign. This is all of the cases in the entire system that are directly assigned to a user. So as you can see, um, this particular case here, this is prepare reports by the legal officer. You can see the transaction number, the subject, the assigned to. So you can see that this case is directly assigned to M. Phillips. So with this said, you can actually open the case, but the case is limited to viewing only. So you can actually click on yes. And you will see that the actual buttons, the response buttons are grayed out. And you can actually see the items on the case. This way, you can actually see information on the case. If there was a case where it's needed to be reassigned, the administrator users have the privilege to reassign cases to other users. So for instance, if they went on vacation and they forgot to reassign their cases to another officer, you'll be able to reassign this particular case file. So let me see. So as you see, this case, I reassigned this to Vanessa, and now the assigned officer is V Hall. So that is one of the actual benefits of this all assigned in basket. Enables you to reassign cases to other officers, and also you are able to look into the actual case to see the issues if any arises. So for instance, this particular in basket, we can see that an error has occurred on a particular case. So the transaction number ending with 5615, and the actual case is a case screening. We can see that there's an error, review error. So once you open the actual case, you can see the particular error message here. It says malfunction, step, invalid participant. So with this information, you can see at case screening, this particular case has an invalid participant error. So we can directly say it could be the assigned officer that is not added. It could be later on in the actual workflow. It could be the investigation team that needs to be updated. But as we can see, it's case screening. So we know in case screening, there is the assigned officer who is supposed to action this particular case. So if I want to administer this case, I can say, well, let us put an administrator officer, assigned officer. All right. And we can actually repeat, skip, or terminate. The reason behind these three buttons, repeat allows you to actually repeat the case and retry, or basically retry the case. So now that I have entered the assigned officer and the error was invalid participant, I can repeat. And then once I repeat and the case does not return to the administrator in basket, we can see that it was actually assigned to this particular officer. And once it is assigned to the particular officer, we can go directly to the all assigned, and we will see this particular case show up here. So let's try that. Before I click the button, the skip button, this is if you want to bypass a particular step in the workflow. So for instance, if you saw an error that more than likely is not going to interfere with the actual workflow, because there's particular errors that come up that do not affect the workflow. And later on, we will see some of those errors and then determine it. If the case was here and it failed and it was basically unfixable, and it was at a particular stage that was no harm to the actual workflow, like probably at the first stage of the workflow, or probably towards the end where it was already completed, but something in the system caused it to not go forward to the closure step or to the actual end of the actual workflow, you can click terminate. And this would actually remove the case from this basket. So now that we have covered those 3 buttons, let us try to repeat and see what happens. So now that I have clicked that, it has gone from the administrator basket. Click reset, no case returned. Now let us click on the all assign. We can now see that the case is actually assigned to DE admin. This is our administrator user. So once I click on the case now, the case can move forward and we can proceed now to regular processing of the work. Okay, so any questions on that particular item?
Yes, Justin, just trying to understand the terminate button. When it's clicked, just want to get something clear. Does it mean the case is terminated, meaning that nobody can do anything else on the case? Remind me what terminate means.
Yes, terminate means that you have terminated the actual case in the system. And that button should only be clicked once you know that there's nothing you can do with the case. Like for instance, if the case was stuck in the system for a certain reason, it may not be something to do with the actual workflow, and maybe all cases in the system stuck from a long time that needs to be terminated. There has to be a reasoning behind clicking that particular button.
I have a quick question with that. So you're saying the role of administrator, it's not a definite admin account. You can assign that role to somebody else. So say, for example, you assign that role to Miss Phillips. She could do that terminating that you just said a while ago. Is that correct? Different from an administrator account.
Yeah, she can't do it if she's not added to the administrator account. Like we would have a group set up where only administrator users will be added, and they will be only
all right, so it's a group assignment. So you can have an administrator and they are in an administrator group. Now why I asked, because that's a very tricky, or I should say it's a very powerful option for an admin to have. I know we administrators now have certain functions, but I'm thinking where it comes to a case, to actually terminate a case. Give me a scenario where we would want to terminate a case out of the system, like what you create the case by accident. Wouldn't we just leave that for a paper trail or reuse it? Or like an example of why I would need to terminate a case.
Let me jump in here. So the administrator role is only for IT. It's not for admin staff. Admin staff, they have their own different roles, but for the administrator role, this is for IT. And as Justin showcased, in the administrator in basket is when the case has a technical problem or other. So all cases that disappear from all users who are assigned, it would, and you can't find it because there's a problem with it, it will go into the administrator in basket as opposed to the all assigned cases. And that's
so that's what I wanted to know, Elena. What would cause that? What could that user possibly do to cause that case to get corrupted, for argument's sake, why it would reach to the admin?
Okay, so there are many instances where it may end up in the administrator in basket. Justin just showed just now that when a user was supposed to have been assigned to a case, but was inadvertently not assigned. So therefore it can't proceed to the user because it requires an assigned officer. So when it went into the administrator in basket, it showed up as invalid participant. And hence the IT person can go in and assign an officer. But that's few and far between, and that's almost never happens because in most instances, users are prompted to put in the officer and their validations. Justin was just trying to depict a scenario to show when it went to the administrator in basket. Instances where it might go into the administrator in basket is if you had a massive power surge and the case may have become corrupted, or more instances like that. Or there was a change in the system. So normally what happens is that we might go and change the system. For example, Mr. Miller might say, change the name of that response button, right? So it's not going to happen in a normal grand scheme of things. It will happen in the instance where maybe some development work was done, or there was, the case itself was corrupted for no apparent reason with respect to anybody. So the case came in and there was some form of corruption on it, and you can't find it. So you go in and you say, oh, okay, you can, and in most instances, you might be able to repeat the case. So it could be that there was the power went out and the cases ended up there, or in more instances than not, sometimes the services might need restarting. So you might launch a case and the services need restarting because maybe the database is down, one of the engines are down. So you start the case and you can't find it. When you go, you see it in the administrator in basket. And you
So there's, I get that. So there's no avenue whereby you could get that option on a legitimate case. That's what I just want to verify. So if everything is right with that case, the admin won't be able to see that terminate option. It's only a problem case.
Oh yeah, only so. In the administrator in basket is only for cases that go into error. And normally you'll see an error on an error code there. So it's only when cases go into error, no otherwise, and it's not visible to any of the regular users. And this is only for IT staff to go in and say, okay, we can't, something is wrong with this case, and that's why it's there. But on
a normal course, they can't just find a case and hit terminate.
No, and they wouldn't have security access to this either. Security access to the administrator in basket will be restricted to only the IP. So nobody else would have access to this in basket at all, or even know it exists.
Okay, got you.
Okay, so I can, so if I can add to that, for instance, when say probably a database connection timeout, cases will come here, things like that. It may be a connection issue, maybe something like that, something small where you can actually go and you once you actually look at the actual error message, you can determine, well, connection timeout, you need to repeat, try again. Database may have been down at that particular time and just need to repeat. Things like that. It's not anything that the actual other users can actually see, because these are just technical issues.
Understood.
Okay. Any more questions?
Sure. I have a question. Morning. This is Christopher. In terms of terminate, in terms of the case being terminated, can you explain what that means? Does it leave a trail in the system, or it's gone?
Yeah, it leaves a trail in the system. All cases are actually they actually have an audit trail. I'll show you that in a short while. Because when you terminate the case is still here, because if you go to cases, for instance, here, all cases show up here. They are still in the system, although you terminate, you just terminate the case. You're not actually deleting the case, you're just terminating the actual workflow. So for instance, here, you see the case has gone through the various stages: case launch, case origination, And at case origination, something probably happened, probably an old case in the system that was stuck or something like that that changed well, and the case can no longer go ahead. When you terminate, they will still have a trail of the actual case in the system. So it won't be deleted from the actual system.
And would it be included in the officer's number of cases for the period? So say, for example, the officer that is on that case is a new, you know, with the system being new, you may have failures and stuff, and or, you know, challenges come up. And for the month, the officer know that they have inputted about 20, but the system show 15 or it show 25. Would those terminated cases be shown in the normal you know, input of cases?
So all of the information on the cases are trapped in the system. Once the case is terminated, the actual case state of the case changes. So you see, we have working, we have complete, we have failed.
Okay. Good.
Basically, when the case is actually active in the system, the case will be working. Once it's completed,
okay,
it would be here. So there are three actual states of the actual case.
Fail, yeah. In terms of the order, see the order, we just said fail may send up another red flag is in fail mean that the officer failed to, of course, complete the case, or fail mean the case it is an error. So I'm not sure if, you know, if perhaps we want to explain that more in the whole process, that fail doesn't mean that the case is hung. It just means that it became a system error, failure or something, to, you know, to break it down a little more simpler. And so I'm not sure if you know.
Okay, so let me replicate a case in the error in basket again and show you, right? I will add a case to the system right now. Let's just add a competition case.
While you're doing that, Justin, let me just reiterate. The terminate function has to be used very sparingly by the IT administrators when they are aware that there's no other possible process to get this case back on track. And normally this only happens when in few and far between cases, because you can skip the step, you can fix the error and proceed. So it's not, there has to be like a little IT policy developed amongst the team where you say that in order to terminate, we need to get the approval of Andrew. Or in order to terminate any cases, we need to get the approval of Sean before a case is terminated. Because, you know, it's not going to happen willy-nilly, right? That's number one. And number two, in terms of the case states, these terminologies are not necessarily exposed to the end user. These are really technical terms where the case has failed, the state is failed, the end user will just know if the system, if the cases have been are working or the cases have been completed. But if the case failed, it means that there's a technical problem. So the techies would know, you know, how many cases would have failed, and then they can look in and determine what was the cause of failure. But we're showing you here how to administer the system in the event that there are errors. In the normal course of things, you're not going to, these don't happen. These are the few and far between, right? Go ahead.
Okay, all right, so I pushed the case assessment where the ED would assign the officer or send it directly to the SLC or the CDC to select the officer. So in the actual interface, when I click on this button, there's a validation that I must assign an officer here. So I'm gonna actually force this to go into error by using the administrator tool. So I'm gonna actually select this button without actually clicking on the actual assign officer so that I can actually replicate an error. So now that I actually did that, this case will be gone from here and it will be in the administrator in basket. So we can see now there's an error. The actual error here, as I showed before, invalid participant because an assigned officer was not selected. So if I click the terminate now, so let us see. So in the case itself, let's see here. Okay. The case. This particular case now is, in this case I launched today. The last case I launched, yes. Great. So if you look at the timeline visualizer, you would see that this particular, by clicking the terminate button, you can see that the actual case screening failed.
Internet.
Does that answer your question, Christopher?
Yes, thanks.
Okay, no problem. So you still have a track in the system.
I have a question.
Okay.
Okay, nice. Quick question. So we can foresee a scenario where the users will be going on using the case, working on a case, and all of a sudden an error occur, similar to what you simulated a while ago. What would happen to that case from the user standpoint? Will it be that they go in the system and they're like, where's the case? They can't find the case. Or will it be that they will see that the case has an error when they access it? Will they still see the case? Or,
No,
or will the case just disappear?
So if the case is supposed to be, say for instance, the case screening where the officer was assigned, right? Say it was assigned to a legal officer. The case would show here, right? If the case had an error before it got to this particular stage where it was assigned, where no assigned officer was actually selected in that particular scenario, the case would go directly to the administrator role right here, so that the administrator IT would be able to assess the actual error, fix it, and then the case, once the issue is resolved and the repeat button is clicked and the case does not come back to the administrator, the case would then show up here in the basket of the particular user.
All right, not to stress on that whole point too long, but quick question based on what Andrew said. So it hasn't been assigned, it's a case screening. I kind of seen a problem. When a case comes to administrator, first question is, we'll get a notification if we're not logged into the system, correct? Probably an email or something. Is that the case?
Yes, you can have.
All right, why I asked, because if somebody created the case, right, it's created internally, and this error occurs, and you say it goes to the administrator, in that person's mind, let's say a receptionist or a secretary, if they don't come to IT and say, boy, I was creating a case and it gone missing, can you check what happened? They might start over the case by creating it again.
All right.
Am I assuming correct
Exactly
that could happen? So shouldn't we get some sort of prompt to tell them, don't try to create it over, error occurred, talk to IT or something? I'm just trying to find out that whole area there.
Yes, let me jump in. So that's an excellent question. So one, notifications can be set whenever cases go to the admin in basket, right? So this is the in basket indication that this case has an error. Now, the principle of case management, right, is that all cases are always in somebody's in basket. So if it leaves your in basket, it goes to somebody else's in basket. That's the whole principle of case management. So when it's not in somebody's in basket and it's working and you can't find it, the first place is to go to the IT. Okay, can you check your administrator in basket to see if the case ended up in there? And I agree with you. You can be proactive and you're notified. So once you're notified that the case is in there, it means that you have to proactively address that, because that means somebody is expecting that case in their in basket, but it went to the administrator in basket. So once you're notified, it means that the IT staff have to work on it with, with alacrity to ensure that the case is resolved, and then notify the user that if the case has been repeated or skipped or whatever. In some instances, what we have noticed is that years could pass and you won't experience it at all, or sometimes when power goes down and you have to restart the machine. If you submit a case from user A to user B, the case will leave your in basket, but it will go into the administrator in basket because it's been further down. So if the admin team is not proactive in terms of checking to see if the power was out, did we restart the services, you have to anticipate that cases will go in the admin in basket, then this may happen. And therefore, nobody will be notified except you that there's a case in your in basket. But this is normally how we support this.
Okay, Sean, did that answer your question?
Yes, it did.
Okay, so if no more questions, we can move on to the second point. Okay, so the second point would be.
Yes, please proceed.
Okay. The second point will be working with the process administrator tool. You would have seen a glimpse of it just now when I actually recreated the error in the system. So let me reset this so I can actually come. Okay, so this is the manual way of actually accessing this particular tool. A shortcut would be created to actually load this particular tool by just a click, but I'm going to actually load it manually to show you. So let me show you this. So this particular tool would be located in the, depending on the installation in your environment. This is our environment, so it more than likely would be in the IBM FileNet. Tools. Then this is a particular BAT file that will be loaded, right? So this is all manual now, but this will be automated. So what I will do, I will navigate to this particular already there, but I will navigate to this particular actually the actual directory. Go there, and then I will attempt to load this particular PE designer, right? So and then to add to this, I have to put the actual connection point. So this CP1 is the connection point in our environment. This is where you are connecting to. You're connecting to this to administer the actual cases in the system, the workflows, etc. So this is the actual where everything is stored. So once I click this button, the actual designer would prompt you to enter the username and password. You will be provided with the username and password also. So this is our password. So now the application is loaded. So to actually access the process administration tool, where you would see all the cases launched in the system, and you can actually administer, open them, and actually view the actual workflow, the actual maps, everything, where you can actually assign the officer, you can actually fix a case if it goes to the actual in basket of the administrator. There will be a lot of things that you can do with this tool, and I'll just show you right now. So what you go here and you see process administrator. You click here. Once you click here, it opens the actual administrator where you can see the actual interface. So we can see, we can look, we can search for workflows. We're going to look in the workflow roster. This is where all the cases are stored. And then this is the actual solution that was created. So the solution is competitions and consumer protection solution. This is the actual solution for this implementation. And then the search mode, you want to deselect this read only, and you want to click on edit. So you can actually be able to actually administer the actual workflow. So once you do that, you can actually click find now, and it would display the actual cases in the system. Currently, we have only 4 cases in the system. There may be a time where they have probably a lot of cases in system, and you can actually fine tune the actual search. So if I wanted to search for, say, only cases that were launched on the 4th of October, which is today, we have a criteria that we can set to say start time. Click on start time on this particular first one. The operator start time is greater than over. And that will give you the actual syntax. So it will be the month, day, comma, the actual year. And this is the actual syntax that I use to actually find the cases. So start time is greater than the 4th of October, 2021, 12 midnight. So I insert this, and then I say, and start time is less than the 5th midnight. So this would return all cases launched on the 4th of October. So once you added that syntax correctly, now you can actually click find out, and it will only show you the cases launched on the 4th. So as you can see, the F start time is 11:56, 55 seconds this morning. So into that, we can see that there's one case here. You can see that the particular case is at case screening. The originator of the case was the admin account. And the actual user that the case is actually at, we call F_bong user. These are actually system fields for this particular application. So you will get familiar with the particular fields. So let me move this. As you can see on the case, you can see the SLC is not assigned, the CBC is not assigned, the legal officer is not assigned, the competition analyst is not assigned, the research officer, the lead investigator. But you can see there's an assigned officer, which is the actual assigned officer that was selected by the executive director. And you can see that the actual error that was on the case before was set invalid participant. So this is the actual error that we encountered. So now that I have shown you that, we can actually click here and actually open the actual workflow. So if you hover over the particular button, you can see open tracker. This actually opens the workflow so we can actually track where the actual, which actual step the cases are currently. So if I actually open now, you'll see it will load the actual workflow. As you can see, particular case is at case screening. The case screening step is at the admin. The actual buttons are submit to supervisor for review. And if I go back to the actual interface on the case manager, you can see that the case is actually here the same way, assigned to me, the admin, and we have the same particular button. If there was an error on the case, for instance, the error before where there was no assigned officer, you could actually came here, right click on the actual case, click on tasks, workflow groups. This would open all of the groups that I showed you right here, where you can see who is the SLC user, the CDC user, the legal officer, the competition analyst, the research officer, lead investigator, the assigned officer. You can see now the assigned officer is selected as the admin. So if there was a case where you needed to change the assigned officer, you can actually go here, you can say, well, the assigned officer shouldn't be this particular person right now. They're not available to action the case. We can actually say, who's that? Who's available? M Phillips. Okay, let's select M Phillips as the actual assigned officer, and then we click save. Once we have done that, we need now to reassign the actual case because the case is still assigned to her, but we have changed the actual the assigned officer work group. This is the actual officer that the case goes to. So if I open here and I show you, if I had clicked on submit to supervisor for review, and it went to my supervisor here, and then the supervisor wanted to submit feedback to this particular officer again, right? If I just reassign the particular case here and not the particular work group, when it goes to this particular, to the senior legal counsel, and they submit feedback to the actual officer, it would return to the admin, although I assigned it to M. Phillips. So what I did is that I changed the actual officer to M. Phillips. And now what I have to do is I have to reassign the particular case also to M. Phillips because it's still at the admin. So, M. Phillips. Now that I have assigned it to M. Phillips, the case disappeared and reappeared, and now the actual case is at M. Phillips. So if I go back to my case manager and I reload this system, you will now see that I have nowhere in my basket. So if I log out now and I go to M. Phillips, you will now see that the case is here at M. Phillips. Case screening. And that is one of the ways that you can actually assign a case. You can assign the case via that method, via the tool, or like I showed you before, as the administrator user, you can actually go to the all assigned in basket. You can go to the all assigned in basket for the administrator. You can see that the cases are in Phillips here. And this will be only available for the admin users and the other power users. Actually click reassign. Okay. Now the case is reassigned again to the admin. So if I go back here and I go to the legal officer and I go back to my work, the case is back here. In the system, we automatically have it that when you change a user in the system, it checks after the case goes forward, it checks again to see who is the actual assigned officer, where we store that in a particular field. And then it automatically adds it to the actual work group. So you wouldn't have to do all of what I did, but I just showed you just in case. So for instance, you're reassigning it to M Phillips, and you also have to go here and change the actual work group. In the system, this will be automatically done. But this is just a way to actually show you how you can manually do this by assigning the officer and assigning that officer to the actual work group. So you can also do it for the legal officer. You can also do it for the competition, the research officer. This is a competition case. And this is the manual way that you can do it, but it's already built in the system that when you actually click on this particular tab here, it's not going to be available at this particular point where you can see the investigation team, but let me show you the actual case. Yes. So normally when you're changing the actual investigation team here, say for instance, someone was not available. It's not available in this particular view right now. But if you wanted to change the actual officers on the fly, it would automatically be done in the actual in the workflow. You wouldn't have to do it. So for instance, like changing assigning officer, like changing the actual assigned officer, you wouldn't have to manually do it here. The system will automatically do it. Okay. Point on this. So now back to here where you have the actual out of office feature. And there's a case, there are cases where you want to delegate your basket to another user if you're going on vacation. But for a case where that particular officer forgets to actually delegate their basket, as an admin user, you can come here, click on any case, go to the actual person. So maybe M Phillips is the person that should have delegated their basket. You can click this particular button. I am currently out of office. And you can do it manually and reassign it to Vanessa. Now, all future work that goes to M Phillips would then go to Vanessa. And then if you wanted, you can actually come back here and you can actually remove it, or Michelle could remove it in her preferences when she returns. So this is just another way of manually doing and administering the actual system where you cannot log in with the actual user credentials and do something on their behalf, you can do it through the administration tool. Okay, any questions on that particular one or two?
So Justin, essentially, you demonstrated 1, 2, 3 ways in which you can change or reassign a case, or change whoever is assigned to the case for the different, whether legal officer or research person. Was that 3 we saw or more? One.
It was about three ways you can do it, or 2 or 3 ways. So the first way was in the administrator in basket, when the case comes here, and you can actually administrate from here, change assign and repeat. And you can actually do it here by the all assign, because the administrator user can actually see, right click, reassign the item here, because you can see. And then you can actually do that by this particular tool. This is the actual admin tool where you can do more. You can actually see the workflow. You can actually understand the actual issue a little better, because this particular interface, sometimes it does not give you the actual bigger picture of the actual issue. So sometimes you need to go here to actually look into the case, open the workflow, and see what is really going on with the particular workflow. So you go here, you can see that the workflow, is at this particular step in the workflow. You can see it's here. Workflow, you can actually go. So normally when a case is the administrator in basket.
So that's so
go ahead. You can go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was saying that I'm seeing where this tool is really good for investigating issues related to cases that comes over to the admin basket.
Yeah.
Where if we see an error, we can actually try and dig down to see and find. Yeah.
So normally when a case comes here, when a case goes into the administrator role here, the actual it goes here. So basically this is what you see. You get the error and it goes to review error, goes to the administrator role. And these are the 3 buttons: terminate, escape, repeat. Once you click repeat, it actually returns and try again to action to go forward, basically go forward again. So once you do that and you see it may be 1 or 2 errors. It may be 1 error at first. You may fix that particular error. And then when you actually repeat, you may see a different error message come up where, say, for instance, you assign an officer. And then when you assign the officer, you may come up on a connection timeout, because at that particular time you reassign the officer, the system may go down. So then another error or issue may arise, and then you will see another error message. And sometimes most of the time they are not major errors once the system is stable and no development is going on during the actual using of the system. So for instance, if you have a major change and sometimes things may not be the exact way, the older cases may have a little conflict. It may have to change a value here in the case. And sometimes that's about it. It's not really a big issue. But as I say, the validations that I have in the actual workflow, it would prevent you from actually what I should say, you would not be able to go forward without putting in the assign officer once you click on that particular button. But I just showed you that particular scenario so that I can actually get a case in the administrator in basket. But normally it's just little small minor things, system faults, as Elena said, power outages, things like that we normally see.
Okay.
Any more questions on this particular point? Okay, all right, so we will go forward to the next point. The next point would be update the IBM security script in the BAW admin desktop. Okay, let me show you this. So as the administrator user, right, there's this particular button to the left-hand side where you can see manage roles. So once you click on this particular button, you can see all the roles that are in the system. So you can see for the executive secretary, you can see that Jean Lally is a member of that particular role, the admin, which is the admin user. See, Mr. David Miller is the executive director. The legal officers mapped currently are Vanessa Hall and Michelle Phillips. You can see the competition analysis that I read. You can see research officers. You can see the actual CBC. You can see director of field operations. You can see the actual chief executive officer. You can see a whole set of users. So you can actually add users here to actually play this role. So for instance, if you wanted, say, for instance, this particular role, the executive secretary, we only have one executive secretary added to this particular role, but she's not available. If you wanted to add someone to actually work and push out some cases, or you can actually add a user here. So for instance, in user, so yeah, you can actually add Deborah here, and she'll be able to see this particular in basket where the executive secretary, they have cases here. So in a case where you wanted to add more than one user to a role to help push forward some cases because they're not available at the time, they're on vacation, they're on anything, this is where you actually add this particular user. And as I said earlier, when I first started, the actual role, the role and the role, which is executive secretary here, and the actual my work is different. My work is when the case is actually assigned to your particular user. So as you can see, the admin, when the case is actually assigned to the actual user, the admin, M. Phillips, D. Reed, D. Wilson, it goes right here. Now, when you're in a particular role where, for instance, the executive secretary, there's more than one executive secretary, the actual cases go here in the queue. So when the cases go here in the queue, anyone that logs in as the executive secretary role, who you add to the active directory or here in the manage roles, they will be able to see the cases here in this particular in basket and action them.
Quick question,
that's-
Justin.
Okay.
That adding a user right there. I think we had that question, so I'm going to assume that that's what we're going to do. We're going to have what you call now, multiple authentication. So the authenticating a user via Active Directory and otherwise, because we had said we were going to look at how we deploy the system in terms of if we do it over the internet or if we don't get a VPN thing in place, then we use it over the internet. So is adding a user here being able to do the work if we don't do that VPN into the system using Active Directory? I was trying to find out how this user adding here as opposed to adding them via Active Directory links into the system.
Okay, so this particular mechanism.
Before you go on, Justin, all users have to be in the Active Directory in order to be added as a role within the system or a user. So all users must be added to the Active Directory in order to access the system. And once they're added to the Active Directory, can be exposed over the internet and leverage their work accordingly. But they must be added to the Active Directory.
Okay, that's all I wanted to figure out how that part would work. So we still put them in the Active Directory, but we still can deploy the system over the internet.
100%.
Okay.
Yes. So yeah, this is tied directly to the Active Directory. So I can show you here. So for instance, this is the Active Directory here that I have on this particular implementation. You can see I have the users added. So for instance, if I add a user test1, user test1, password. So that particular user test1 is here now. So if I wanted to add test1 now to this particular implementation, you can see that test1 is here and it's tied directly to the Active Directory. So I can add test1 as an executive secretary and I can save. And if I log in as test1 now, let me show you that. So test1. So once I log in as test1, I'll be only able to see the executive secretary role. So as you can see right here, the executive secretary is only exposed to me. Security, I have not added any security for this particular one. So you can see they cannot add cases here, they cannot manage roles, they cannot do anything. And this is now where I'm going to show you the actual script. So I added this particular user by the manage role mechanism. This is one way you can add a user, but this user now, they cannot manage roles, they cannot add cases, they can just work. So if I go back now to the actual script now, where you can actually add these users and save them instead of manually doing it directly from here, you're going to see the difference. So these are the object stores for the implementation. This is the actual design object store in the development. And this is the actual target object store, which is the actual target object store in our development environment. So we have two object stores for our development environment. The design where the workflows are designed and saved and then deployed. And then once I deploy, it goes to the actual target object store. So as you can see, the deploy solutions here is a solution.
Sorry, Justin. Sorry, have we moved on from the user security and privilege? Because I have a question. I wanted to know if
we are still at point 3. We're still at the point 3.
Okay. I wanted to know if we can create new roles with a whole set of different permissions if we wish. That's a capability that we should have.
So you wanted to create a new role in the system. So for instance, if you wanted to add, not sure, deputy.
No. Suppose we wanted to bring out some temporary persons and wanted them to help with something. We just all we needed them to do is to be able to, say for example, just enter cases and that's it. If we could create special rules for that, if we would have that capability.
Let me answer that question. Andrew. So you can create new users in the system, and the new users can act in any of the roles. So Justin, you can show them the manage roles functionality here, and so you can show them how to do that. So let me explain. Because in the system is informed by rules and roles. So you might have someone who can say add cases. So you might want a temporary, you might want to have a temporary. So just to add, just show them how to add users to role, existing role system. Yeah. So let's suppose you have to hire a temporary, say university student to add cases. And normally the receptionist had that function to add cases. Let's just say, but the receptionist was off, or you wanted to include more users so that they can add cases. Then you can add more users to the Active Directory role, the relevant Active Directory role, and then map that role to the user in the system. But if you want to add a totally new role that's not defined in the workflow process, then that will not be possible. So say, for example, you wanted to add a deputy CEO, right? And the deputy CEO will do X, Y, and Z, which is not something that the CEO does. It's a totally new function. And the workflow will have to be mapped accordingly. If, however, you wanted to add a deputy CEO who would actually get the CEO because the CEO is on vacation, then you can add that person to the CEO group in the Active Directory, map them to the system, and then they can act as the deputy CEO in the capacity. So, and that's very simple. Just
okay.
Just to show them how to just map existing users in the Active Directory to roles and to new roles in the system.
All right, before you move on, I'm seeing where we can actually, is what I'm seeing here, can we like modify the permissions for each role? So if we wanted to create case off the receptionist, we could just click that checkbox and that's it?
Yes. So once you come in here, you're actually configuring the actual security for every single role in the system. So you can determine who can create a case, who can view a case, who can update a case, and who can manage a case. So manage now is the ultimate. So basically, administrator users are the ones that have that particular checkbox ticked so that they can actually do more in the system. You wouldn't want to allow other roles, depending on if they're a power user or not, you wouldn't want them to be able to manage a case. So they will be able to do a lot of things on the case, like reassign, remove certain things from the case, etc. But this is basically the permissions of that you can actually set up. So this is your schema that you can actually set for your particular configuration.
Okay.
So,
okay. Quick question. So what I'm getting is that for each role, there is a workflow that is assigned to it. Am I correct?
Not exactly, because some roles are created here based on the actual roles in your the actual post in your organization. So for instance, the legal secretary, this particular person is not really mapped in the workflows. The paralegal officers, for instance, the paralegal officers, the general manager, they're not really mapped in the system in the actual workflow, but they can actually log into the system. They can actually view cases. They can do different things, different permissions can be added so that they can actually view cases, because they're more than likely there are users that just come into the system to view certain things, do audits, etc. And they'll be able to view, they'll be able to view the cases. So in your particular scenario where you wanted to hire persons to add cases, these persons are just going to add the case and it goes to the next user? What are your expectations?
Let me expand on that, just to answer Andrew's question specifically, Justin, and get back to you. So to answer, it was Andrew. So user workflows are not created for roles. Roles are created for the workflow. So you may have a workflow and you might have, let's say, 20 steps or 10 steps in the complaints process. And then you add users, add roles within that entire workflow. So the case might be added by a receptionist, then it goes to a complaints officer, which is a role, to the DFO, which is a role, back to the complaints officer, it might go to a legal officer, research officer, etc. So the roles are created that would add to the workflow, but not workflows created for roles. Okay, and to answer that question, I think I answered it already, Justin, which is if you want to add a temporary user to play a role, etc. I think I answered Andrew's question there. Right? So yeah, we can.
So all right. So all right. So pretty much, if we wanted that to create a brand new role, then it is not impossible, but it would have to be added to the workflow for it to be usable, so to speak.
Yes.
Am I correct?
Yeah, 100%. Suppose you wanted to add a chairman for chairman's signature. So I'm just pulling this out of the hat. So before responses can go out or final responses, you have to have a chairman's signature. That's a new role and a new function. That would have to be added to the workflow process. And then you have to have all the response buttons, make sure all the views, et cetera, so that the chairman would have the interface as well as the functionality, as well as the role set up in the system. So what we do is that because we already have all your workflow, you might want to tap a user onto an existing workflow or onto an existing role. And that's how we simplify the process, because you then can add any user, then an existing role, because normally you don't have new roles per se coming up in the system unless you have some major changes, but you might have many new users in the capacity of different pre-existing roles. And the system has the functionality to store that flexibility.
Got it. Thanks.
Yeah, so for example, if you wanted to, let's suppose you had some backed up cases, right? Retroactive cases, for example, it's a tangible example. Suppose you had backed up about 50 cases that came via email and processed out of the system, and you wanted to hire some temporary students, whatever, to do that, then you can give them the capacity of, say, the receptionist, remove some of the security here, give them only the option to create case or whatever, depending on what you wanted, and then when they're done, remove them. So that's some of the functionality you can use right here.
Okay, so now that we have seen the actual permissions on each user, we can go now to the next step of the security configuration. So log back in. Security configuration, edit security configuration, you select the actual file that you want to configure. Next. We saw before I actually expanded on the actual each case type, where you can see the actual roles for that particular case type. So on, I can access the cases. Now we go on to the next step where we can see who is defined as an administrator and assign privileges. So basically this particular user, the admin, has full control. This is the actual administrator user. So in a case where we have the more than one administrator user, we can add, say, the administrator team here so that they can actually do more stuff in the system. We go on to the next step, we will see now the actual associated users with each particular role. So I have just added the actual users here from the Active Directory, but what would be done in your system, you would have Active Directory groups created in your Active Directory groups created in your particular the Active Directory. So for instance, legal officers, you would have the executive director, you would have research officers, you would have compliance officers, etc. And once you create an actual group and you actually add users to this particular group, all you have to do is add those, add this particular group here. So you will click on executive secretary here, for instance. You would add, you would select the group. So for instance, you would have an executive secretary group. I don't have one created, but you will have the group, and all you have to do is add the group. So you can actually add the actual user, or you can add the actual group from the Active Directory. And this is it will be much easier to actually add the group here, so that when you do any adding of users to, say for instance, the executive secretary group in the Active Directory, you wouldn't have to come back here and map these users all over again, next save and apply. The actual users will be automatically loaded because it is mapped directly to the group and not the particular user. So as you can see, for instance, Andrew, you asked if you can add actual users to do certain things here. You can actually click on it. You can say, you need to add. I added Deborah in the actual manage roles, but she's not here because this particular security is basically what I can say, the actual main security. So when I add here, she will have the privileges of the actual executive secretary. And this is basically what we call the master security. So whatever is added here and saved is what will show up in the solution. So if you added, say for instance, you were managing roles here before, and you added your users here temporarily because you didn't want to go into the security script and actually add them, you would have to remember to come here. Let me go to the I added Tess as the legal officer, right? And which user I added Tess as test one. I added test one as anyone remember where I added test one? Test one. So I added test one as the executive secretary. But as you can see, test one is not here. So if I actually save this, go to next, and actually save and apply. So this is where you configure and manage your security configuration. You set it up, you make your changes here, you go and you save and you apply. Now you're applying the actual security node to the solution. So when you add the security, it would update in real time. So now, if I go here now as test one, I'm still logged in as test one, and I refresh my page now. You will see that test one no longer has access to the executive secretary role because you did that temporarily, but then after the actual main security is the actual security where you add the permissions, you add the the actual users and so on. Once you save that, it overrides what you did here. So you need to remember to, if you made changes here, you need to, and you want to go to the actual main security where you're doing your real configuration, you have to remember to add back the users here. And then you will have this message where it says, you're not a member of the role that is associated XYZ, and you have the user. So that is basically the actual power of the managed security, where you can actually here. Then again, to go to security, you go to the design object store, click on it, click on the solution. This is the particular solution, competition and consumer protection solution. You right click, you manage, security configuration, you edit or create a new one. If you wanted to create a new schema and use it, you edit. Then you would start here. You can configure your security. Move on to the next steps, all the way to the end. Check your box, apply the security configuration, you save, you apply, and you wait for it to complete, and then your security is deployed. Any questions on that?
No questions here.
Okay, if there's no questions, we can move on to the next point. Okay, so the next point will be creating search templates. Okay. So, as an administrator, as an administrator user, you go there. If you can look at the URL, you can see the actual this URL. HTTPS is the actual IP address / navigator / desktop equals either BAW, which is the business automation workflow, which is the main case, the actual where you process your cases, the ACCE, which is the actual content platform engine, which is where all of the files are stored, all the documents, all the actual workflow, everything surrounding the system is stored. Then we have the BAW admin desktop. This is where I showed you how to find the actual security configuration script. And then there are more desktops that you can actually create to access various things in the system. So if I go directly to the navigator by just removing this and clicking here, we can actually go here by clicking on this menu item right here in the top left-hand corner. We can actually see administration. Now, as I showed you before.
Before you start here, this here, let's just a quick jump in here, just put some context here. So Justin is going to take you to now to be able to search the entire repository for documents, as opposed to in the case view. So now we're moving from the case interface into an interface that will take you directly into the entire document repository with the ability to create search templates to be able to search and retrieve any document within the repository outside of the case. So this means that users, for example, research or other departments who don't play an active role on the cases, but maybe for research purposes, would like to search and retrieve documents within the repository. That is all the documents stored within the cases, but also in tandem stored in the repository. Users can come and search the repository to retrieve cases. Right, that's where you're going, right, Justin? Yes, Justin?
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
I was showing them the actual desktop that they can actually create their their search templates, etc.
Right.
All right. So basically, these are the desktops here where you have access to certain applications in the system. So as you say, the BAW admin, where we had access to the security script, the BAW desktop, where we have the actual workflows and we process the cases and so on, where we do the administration, we see the roles, etc. And then we created a actual desktop called LPA, where we can access anything that we configured in this particular desktop. So in this particular desktop, we configured actual the actual access to certain applications like the search templates, etc. It's so on. So I'm going to show you the search template mechanism from here. So from this particular desktop, we can actually see that the search is now available. So we can actually, there will be pre-configured searches here, but if you wanted to create a new search ad hoc, you can actually come here. So this is how it's laid out. You actually come here, you're searching in the target environment where all of the cases, all the repository is storing the documents, the folders, etc. Then you can say, I want to search on documents, the release version, all versions, current versions. You can actually filter it down to the only Word documents, Excel documents, PowerPoint, Outlook, PDF, notes. And then you can actually do your action filters and say added on by anyone who specific users, etc. Once you selected that, you can actually then now move to the actual class. So for instance, if you wanted to search for some documents, say that were documents that were uploaded as a case screening report, you can actually say that I want to search for documents that have the class case screening report. Then you can expand on the particular document title if you want to say start with key. And then once you're satisfied with your actual criteria, you can actually proceed to search. But there were no cases, no case screening reports I added that started with P. So if I change that now and I say C, I can actually search again, and you will see that 44 items were uploaded with this particular document class started with C. So as you can see right here, you can see document class, case screening report, document title, case screening report, .x. If you wanted to add more properties, you can say date on which particular day. So for instance, if I had a document that was added on, I'm not sure what date. So if we can actually pinpoint this particular one. So we can say this, we are searching for documents that were added on a particular day, the 9th, September the 9th. So we can say equals to September the 9th. Search, we find our search again, and we can see that there are 3 documents that were uploaded on the 9th by the admin user. So we can actually search by documents uploaded by specific users also. So if you wanted, we can actually remove this particular one. Maybe you can say add property, we can say added by equals to search the actual repository, the actual AD for the particular user. We can say Michelle. Michelle is probably a user that adds the case screening report or any document, then we can say that search. So as we can see that Michelle, she added like 23 documents screening report. If you want to know to actually expand this a little more, we expand it to actual document, which is the parent class of all document classes. We can actually retrieve more documents. So for instance, if we click the search now, can search without an additional information, at least one addition. Okay, sorry. So I need to do this again. So I need to, so let me see, added by those. And then we can search again. Now we return 128 items. So we can see Michelle, she added documents such as the approved final consent agreement, case closure documentation, case checklist, the closure report, case screening report, complaints form. So a whole set of documents that were added by Michelle. Once we determine the actual criteria that we want to add to a particular search, so we can say we only want this search that starts with documents that start with C that were added by Michelle. Now we can actually save this particular search. We can call this C cases by Michelle. We can actually determine who can actually use this particular search template. So for instance, we can say only me, the person that created it, which is the particular user DE admin. You can say everyone can use the search template, or you can actually determine, well, this search template is only for the legal group. So for instance, this is only for the officers that are added to the legal group in the AD. Or we can say, well, this is only for the corporate group. If there's a group that you have called corporate in the system, research, whatever. So you can actually determine who can actually use this particular search template. You can say only me, everyone, specific users. So in this case, I'm going to put everyone. So any user that logs in can use this search template. This search template is now saved. So you can see, so now that you save this template, you can actually state if you want this search template to run when it's automatically opened, or you can actually open it manually and then click search. So in this case, I'm gonna click run when open. So now I'm gonna close it, and now I'm gonna just click on it. Once I click on it, it automatically search and returns the results. What you can actually do, you can actually modify what you want to display here. So for instance, I can edit this particular, my particular search template I created. I can click on results and display. I can say, well, what I want to see, I want to only see, I can see modified by, I want to see added on as one of the actual details of it. I want to see added by I can say, well, I need to put these a little higher, this a little higher. I can also see what else I can see. I want to see the actual mine type. And save that results. Click on save. Now my case is saved. Now we can actually run it again. So once I run it again, now you can see more details on the case. So you can see the name, the size, added on, added by, modify on the actual mine type. This is the major version. You can see that it's major version 1, still the first version of this particular document. And then you can see the actual mine type here. So you can see application. This is the actual way how it shows, where you can see this particular document is a word processing document. And then if you go further down, you can see that these documents are application /PDF. That is the actual mine type of that particular document. So in a nutshell, this is how you actually perform your searches. So you can create a search based on document classes. You can actually get more, you can get complicated with your actual search if you wanted to. You can put in a lot of validations and a lot of search criteria. And here you can say date check in. And once the document classes are created, they will have custom metadata properties from the actual case. So you will see things like on this particular case screening report, you will see things like case type, you will see case number, you would see the actual case status. So you will see, well, this case is open, this particular document, this document is part of a case that is open, and XYZ. So you can do a whole set of things and manipulate your search template with a whole set of metadata criteria. Right now we have the basic ones, but we're gonna add the actual the metadata, the document class properties that you would want to see and retrieve your files by. So you may want to retrieve them by, as you say, the case type, the case status, the actual user that added this particular document. All of these metadata criteria will be added to each document class. So when you do a search, you can actually customize it by those particular custom fields. So yeah, this is how you actually create your search template. And this would be available here, depending on the user. As you say, when we go to the main in baskets where you create your cases and you administer as an executive secretary, so on, you can actually click here. You can say, I need to do a search quickly. Search what should I use? I want to search for particular documents. Documents here, see where they are, download them. Once I have the privileges, come back here. Now I have my case. Go back to my cases. Now I can work on my case screening, and then I can actually reference my document, put my document in here, etc., and attach documents. So you can actually use this tool to actually create search templates to find documents easily. Yeah.
Yeah, Justin. Hi, Justin.
Hi. Hi.
Yes. I have a quick question. So, well, I have a couple of questions. One of them: can the search template builder allow you to say in the criteria, you say you can create a condition where assign user equal current user, where current user is the current user that is logged in. Can you do things like that in it? Where you can actually bring in like probably a sort of system value into the search criteria.
So this is for the particular document, right? You want to say, well, the current user.
No, I'm talking about the search template. When you're building a search template using the tool that you showed us a while ago. All right. Is there an option in the criteria where you have that particular Boolean test that is done, where you say, whatever field value equal to greater than less than, in my case, is equal to assign user equal to current user. Can you do things like that?
So
let me take that question, Andrew. So this view here is view of all the documents in the system, and these documents are not assigned specifically to anyone. So the purpose of this is that anybody within the commission who's not assigned a case but who wants to access documents can come to this view and access documents and utilize documents in the system. So this view is not related to cases, and these documents are not assigned to anyone. Cases are assigned to people, but these documents can be leveraged from the repository and assigned to cases.
All right, so, right, I get you. So, but my question is really to understand a little bit more about this builder. So I wanted to know if you can do things like put in wildcard characters so that you can pick up certain values. If you want documents of a certain extension, you could do that. Things like that, a little bit more sophisticated search.
Yeah. So let me explain, yes, 100%. So,
even added by, yeah, there you go, added by. So if you click added by, equal, can you in this section here have, I'm looking here and I'm not seeing where you have any capability to do that. If you wanted to say current user, you have, so there's some systems with some search features that are a little bit more sophisticated where they actually allow you to use set certain type of delimited values that are system values in your search. So you could like you could say something like current user. So added by equal current user, and current user would be of a special type of a special value, probably delimited by curly brackets or whatever the case may be.
Let me say, Andrew, you're 100% correct. So let me explain. So this here is the document management functionality that underpins the case management platform. And in terms of document management, all documents are associated with a parent class, which is called the document class. Each of these document classes are ascribed metadata criteria, and metadata criteria, the keywords we use with metadata are stored in the database system, where you associate these documents with the metadata for search and retrieval. There's also not only the metadata that you put in, which would be, for example, the name of the document, the date it was created, the category of documents, the department to which it belongs, or etc., the description, but there are also what you would just call system copies. So maybe true or false, this document is an active document. True or false, this document is not an active document. True or false, so there's a whole set of system copies. And the search criteria can be used to search on both system copies, as Justin is showing you here, and the metadata criteria that is ascribed to those documents, so you can search on those criteria. So to answer your question is 100% yes, you can search on both the specific metadata criteria as well as the metadata criteria that are used consciously applied to this document for search and retrieve. All of these, as you can see here,
okay,
metadata criteria, right? And all of these. But this goes beyond that, because this is the central repository that underpins the case management system. So whereas users who are not assigned to a case and therefore not assigned to this document can access these documents as well. But to answer your question, yes, you're 100% right. There are a whole slew of system properties that the system can use to query, as well as metadata criteria ascribed to describe the document.
Okay, quick, Justin, I'm gonna ask you if you can do something for me. If you hover over that row that you're working in, the title, and you go across checklist, I'm seeing a gear at the end. What is that? I'm seeing a gear. Oh, that's what it is?
Okay. Yeah. So you can actually make the actual property required for this particular search template. So you can say, well, for this particular search template, you need to add a field here. So for instance, you see, this is actually like the actual settings. So you can see required. See, the property is required, the property is hidden, property is read only, this property is editable.
Okay, I'm seeing.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So this is basically what you can do with the search from here. Yeah, so you can do a whole set of searches, as I showed you, where you were asking about like wild cards, etc. We can use things like where you can say search for document classes that has the word report in it. So for instance, it will bring all the cases that has report, or you can say like .pdf if we wanted to do it like that, where it returns only cases that has PDF in it. So I can say, well, let me search for cases that have audit in it. So you can see meeting audit draft is here, meeting audit report, financial. You can see other cases like that.
Hello.
So this is basically like a wild card, as you can see. Hello?
Yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah, so this is basically like a wild card where you can actually do searches for certain words in an actual document if you want to do. So you can actually pinpoint certain things like documents that has this particular thing, this particular bracket one. So you can actually do a lot with this particular tool. You can set up your templates to actually suit you and actually suit the other users if they require you to build a specific template to search documents. Any more questions on this particular point?
No, that's it. I mean, I have some other questions, but one more question.
Okay.
Will users have the ability to create one of these templates? Or that's something that we don't normally do? Suppose they wanted to save their search. Can they do that?
So basically, I'm showing you this from the actual view of a user. So for instance, this is the admin user. So you can actually navigate directly from your case here. All right. You can actually navigate directly from your case and say, well, I'm the executive secretary. We need to do a search on certain reports. So I can say, let me get a search. I can create my new search once it's available to me. Create my own search and save. And then once I create my search and save, I can say, share this search with only me, or I can make this accessible to everyone. I can make this accessible to specific users. So I can say, well, only I'm creating this search for only the executive secretaries or only me. So yes, to answer your question, yes.
Yes. Yes, it does.
Okay, great. If there are no more questions, we can move on to the next point. Okay. So now we move on to the search facility the actual, for the actual cases. So this is another part of searching. So let's go to the actual cases. You would have seen this demonstrated by Elena a couple of times in the demos. So as you can see, this is the basic search that you have here, where you can actually say added on, added by, and all of the customized properties within the system. All right. So if you simply click here, I want to search for cases added on the 4th of
Just a quick one
October.
here. So Justin moved from searching on documents across the repository universally, and now he's speaking to searching on cases. Okay, so this is the case search, all the cases that you're working on, and not specifically and directly to documents, right? Just wanted to add that, Justin. Go ahead.
All right, so I can actually, once you actually selected your criteria here, you can actually search for particular cases here. So we can see that only 3 cases were added today. They were of the case type, competition matters, and the actual case state is working, modified by and modified on. So now if you want to actually say, let us search for cases that were assigned to M. Phillips or the assigned officer user by this particular thing. We can say, well, these are the cases in the system that the assigned officer was M. Phillips. We can say that the assigned officer was the admin. We can say we found cases that were the assigned officer was the admin. And then we can actually do searches by the case identifier. So for instance, we have here, if I expand to a particular case, and you can see that this is the actual case identifier. This is the actual case that was generated, the case number that is generated automatically by the system. So if you wanted to search by wildcard, if you wanted to say, let's search for the case identifier, you can see here, automatically there's the wildcard presented to you. And you can say, well, I want to search for cases that ended with 006. Search. And once you can see that the cases showed up. This case ended, all the cases in the system that ended with 006. You can go a little further and say, well, I really want to show cases that are with 100,006. You can say let us return, and you will only return this particular case. So when you're administering cases and for instance, officer said, I'm having problems with this particular case number, I need something fixed on it. And they referred it to the IT department or the administration department. They can give you the case number, and you can actually paste the case number directly here, find the case, open it, and actually assess the case from an admin view. This way you will be able to say, I can expand on the actual, timeline and so on. I can actually look at the tabs. You can actually see the documents that were added to the case, the activity, the history, and everything on the case. And that is basically what you call the basic search. So you can search by legal officer if you wanted to. You can say, I'm not sure, the legal officer for the particular case, more than likely in this system is M. Phillips. We can actually return cases that the legal officer was M. Phillips. If you wanted to know to do another search, say for instance, by priority, we wanted to search for all cases that were labeled as urgent. We can say that we return 12 cases in the system that the priority was urgent. So with this, we can actually find a lot of cases by using different criterias to actually manipulate your search. And this is just a basic search. Basic search, you can actually say K Harriet. We use K Harriet a lot in this system team lead. No, we don't use people word. And people words and team lead. Sometimes we use image flux. And a whole set of users we use. So basically, that is how you do it. You perform a basic search for cases. Now, if you wanted to get more complex, you would then go to the advanced search. So now, at the advanced search, you have more options. You can now actually filter the cases by a particular case type. So competition matters or consumer matters, you can say matters and the cases that were added between the 1st and the 4th. I can say I'm looking for a particular case that had a particular breach status, breach identified. I can say I want the cases that have merit. Yes. I can say I want cases that came from the portal. I can say I want cases that are, I'm not going to necessarily filter by this because I'll filter by that when I actually want to refine the search. So I'm gonna do this broad search now first. So I return three cases that were launched from the portal. The breach status is breach identified. The case merit is yes. The case type is competition matters. You can see the transaction number is this. I can see that it.
Justin, I have a question. I have a question right here. All
Okay.
right. Maybe I missed it. Maybe I didn't. When you're in the system, all right, I'm guessing this is, we are searching here as an admin, right? But it would be a similar search for our user, correct?
Yes.
So as an admin, I notice everything that was brought up here so far is on competition. Could an admin bring up consumer searches as well, or are these users separate in terms of what aspect of the database they see? I'm not seeing a mixed result here.
So you want a mixed
So
result?
I know the user in particular. I wouldn't expect a competition legal officer to search or something and it pulls up a consumer legal officer case.
Yeah.
I understand that separation, but as the administrator, does the administrator search across both platforms?
Very good question.
Yeah, it can be configured that you can search across, or it can be configured that you can't search across. So for instance, we have, I can say, well, I want to search across all case types, which is consumer and competition. I can say, I want to add cases added between. Let me go a little bit further so I can get more cases. So I can say the 1st until the 4th, and I can do a broad search here with this particular criteria. So as we can see, we have competition matters, a lot of competitions. But if I scroll further down, let's see now, you can see we have consumer matter cases here, right? So now if I want to get a little more,
that's our admin. No, you don't have to go any deeper. What I want to know is the administrator can do that, but from the user perspective, would the user get that all option as well? Because I'm not sure if we necessarily want the users to search across. I mean, I'd have to verify that with Mr. Miller, and I guess Andrew would verify that with Mrs. Allen. But I understand an admin being able to search across. I don't know if it should be a case where the user should search across. I'm going to make a note of that.
Okay, so what is done in that situation? There are case filters. So there are searches where only specific users, say for instance, the complaints officer they can, the complaints officer is part of the consumer matters. They can only search for consumer cases. They want to be able to search for competition cases. Once that particular case filter is added, they wouldn't, the competition cases will not show up here. So that can be done.
And then that leads me to another question. I don't know if we had broached that.
Okay.
From a customer or a consumer perspective, the client, the person who walks up, say they walk up at the portal, right? So at the portal, they made a competition report, for argument's sake, competition against whatever. Me, Sean, made a competition report. Andrew came in as a customer and he made a consumer report. When the users are added in Active Directory, is there something where we flag them as a competition person as opposed to a consumer person, so that the case is when a person goes to assign the case? I never ask it too deep. At what point do you know what pool to draw from when you assign the case? Is that everybody will show up? So for example, when you're doing the competition part, is that everybody will show up and we just search for Michelle, for argument's sake, and assign her to a case? Or is it that some persons are restricted just to competition while some are restricted just to consumer? If I'm making sense.
Let me answer that. That's short.
Yes.
Okay. So when cases, whether they come from the portal or they come from the ICM on the back, it will go, for example, competition matters will go be assigned specifically to the Competition Commission, and consumer matters will go to the Consumer Commission. So there won't be a mix-up. And if you're, so because they're separated, and they're separated by different workflow processes. So for example, new cases submitted on the portal would go straight to the executive director for competition matters, and for consumer matters will go directly to the DFO.
No, I get that. So what I was saying, I guess I'm missing that part. What I'm saying is, so we know that the term executive director, it would go to the executive director. Is it that that's now a group? So for example, I could create myself and put myself as executive director. So when a case comes in, it will come to me as the user. That's what I think that's a part that I missed.
So it will go to the executive director group, and once
to the group.
Once David Miller.
Okay, that's just I wanted to double check on.
Okay.
So we have to make sure we look at those group assignments correctly. So even though we have so that's why you have legal officer and legal officer consumer. So one will be for competition and one will be for consumer.
Yeah. So
like our research officer, would we have to do that split? Because like, for example, looking at the screen now, say one research officer, I'm sure on the consumer side, they have research officers as well.
So the schema in your Active Directory, because you're merging, will have to be defined, right? Because you're merging and we have different groups. So in your Active Directory groups, you have to be careful and specific in terms of how you're assigning groups in now global Active Directory across both commissions. If you're keeping them separate, it's different, but if you bundle them together, which you're doing, then you have to distinguish between the roles. So you might have executive director, CEO, you might have a receptionist for CAC and a receptionist for FTP, or you may want to merge that. So that is something when you're creating the Active Directory in terms of the roles and the
So Andrew, we need to have discussions on those with our seniors.
Because the roles are in groups in Active Directory. And right now, because you all are still technically separate, right? Therefore, you still function separately, then you might have to distinguish the roles. So because the cases will automatically route to the appropriate role and function. And we can maintain a distinct, like now, because that's we don't know going forward how those roles are going to merge, and that's not a discussion that we can have at this level, right?
Yeah, that's important. An important question, because at some point in time when we merge, we might have, say, a secretary handling both competition and admin person, both competition and consumer related cases, but they will assign it to the various departments. Because when I have units for consumer protection and when I have a unit for complaint for competition related matters. So at some point in time, we'll have users who are going to struggle both competition and things. So yeah, that's an important thing. By the way, so will you be able to have users who can see both case types? Is that something that is configurable?
Yeah, if you put a user in both roles and you have both groups in the active direction. So suppose you have a receptionist for FTC and a receptionist, the same receptionist for PHP. Let's just suppose, right? Or let's be a little more specific. Let's suppose you have research officers, and instead of having two different groups of research officers, you want to put them into a single group. Let's just say, right? Because research officers might want to look at broadly across both commissions. Because so then you can put all the names in both groups. So if you put all the names in both groups, then those users can access both case types.
Oh, okay.
So
that sounds good.
Yeah.
That sounds good.
Yeah, and similarly, for example, in terms of the admin now, you all will be acting as admin across both commissions, because it's a single solution, right? And you can have an admin role for consumer and an admin role for competition, but you can have admin roles there for all users, right?
Okay, follow.
Yeah, and it all comes back down to the actual security script where you can determine who can add both cases. So as you can see here, as you said, you may have the some users merged, probably the executive secretary merged, so we can add both competitions and consumer matters, and that can be done.
All right. So
Yeah, I just looking at the flow because I just want to make sure that, I mean, we are all humans. We do make mistakes. Just want to make sure that the end user, as in the staff actually using it, don't, get something confused and select the wrong thing. We can restrict it down until such time of the merger. We just ensure that persons are in the group that they are supposed to be and searching in the group that they are supposed to search.
And that's an excellent question, and that's exactly how we happen. So yes, so we're all on the same page. I see you guys are really keen and understanding the whole flow. Justin, I know everybody's probably going to be getting hungry. So if anything, just to wrap up, unless any more questions.
Yeah, so the last item would be just to show them how to restart the services. And that would close off everything. And if any additional questions, then we can do. So I'm going to just jump right into point 6, and this shouldn't be long. This is where you can restart the actual services of the system. There will be an actual two shortcuts on the desktop or in the start menu that would allow you to just by a click of a button say stop servers, and then want to, let's say, start services. So let me show you this. In our current system, we basically have it. We are doing it manually in our system, but this particular bat file, as we call it, is going to be tied to a shortcut, so that when you just click on it, it actually just opens and stops the server and starts it again. So I'm just going to manually navigate to where I want. So I'm just going to navigate to the particular thing. So we have two profiles: the MGR, which is the manager, and then we have the node profile, which houses the application. So like the actual BAW application, this is where all the applications load, and the actual manager is like the parent, the actual main management of the whole system. So I'm gonna just jump right into where you start. This is, just note, this is the actual manual way of actual doing this. So I just navigate to this particular path. Then there's an actual command where you can actually stop. You use stop node BAT and stop server BAT, and this particular syntax here is your actual server name. So your server name will be different to ours, but you would have, it would be the same actual mechanism used to actually stop the server. So once you do that, you just actually go here, this particular path, normally copy and paste it, and then click on this button, it stops the server. It prompts you to actually put in credentials to actually stop the server. That can be built in automatically, or you can actually leave that to be validated every time you actually stop the server, because you wouldn't want everyone trying to stop the server that has access to the actual virtual machine or whatever. So you still need a second validation of credentials to actually stop the server. And once you stop the server, then you would then use this other command here. Then you paste it here again. If is manual. And then you start the server again. So the server would come up. It would take around like 5 minutes or so, or shorter. And then this particular application here shows you the actual logs of the server. So you actually see the service starting up. This log. And with this log also, you can actually search through these logs to find actual errors, etc. Certain things that you can actually look through. You can actually see certain things with this particular error application, this log application. So as you can see, it's automatically moving every time I do something. So if I go here and I click on case screening and I loaded that particular case, you can see that I actually loaded something in the system. So basically, yeah, that's it for that particular point. Nothing major.
Okay, so thank you very much, Justin. Yeah, any questions?
Yeah, I just have an oversight question. Oversight as in oversight for us administrators. So most of the stuff that goes into the administrator basket, we're saying it's an anomaly that would throw something and it will come in the basket. It's hard to come up with that example, but I'm going to try and give an example. Say, for example, a officer wants to assign somebody else to a case or change something where some permissions are set. And that person comes one away to myself or Andrew and say, boy, I change such and such on the case. Is there anybody that gets notified when an administrator makes a change to a case? Or basically I'm asking, should somebody be notified when an administrator makes a change to a case after, I guess, once it starts the process, if an admin intervene, will somebody or should somebody be notified that we made a change?
Okay, so let's explain a couple of things here, right? In the first instance, you can assign a user to a case. So we're not talking about error case. Justin, can you go to the all assigned in basket?
Yeah, not errors. Like somebody just want you to change something for some reason without telling, for example, in our case, the SLCR, the competition bureau, them just want to change something for them.
So here we are. We are the all assigned work here, right? We're all assigned work, and it means that right now in the system, we put in security whereby only the SLC, CBC, and ED can do specific. So if it is that you want a notification that something has transpired in the workflow to inform a user, then we can actually create a notification for that, or when you go into the preferences, any change that's done in specific workflows, a notification can be turned on. So for example, if I'm not sure if it's not a new work item, let's see work, let's say change. If you're specifically talking about a change, right? So let me explain to you what changes we have in the system that can be made. You can reassign cases and users can be notified once you reassign cases. Two, if you change a user in the system, so say for example, Michelle or Denise was assigned as the complaints officer. So Michelle was assigned as the legal officer in competition, or Denise assigned the complaints officer in consumer. And you say that if IT goes in and actually changes that with or without approval, if a notification is, if someone is notified.
All right.
Right? So we can actually, because those are the only circumstances whereby IT will go in and override any assigned work or change some assignment, et cetera, right? So in those circumstances, we can actually configure a notification to inform, or the system itself will generate a notification once you reassign work. So we can configure it, or the system can natively done to do that.
Oh, but you're saying outside of that, there are some things that the administrator just definitely cannot touch. It's either for competition perspective, it's either the competition bureau chief or the senior legal counsel or the executive director. We just definitely cannot change certain things. I just want to be clear on that.
Well, it depends on how the case security is configured. When we go into case security, we can configure the case security so that either the administrator has ownership rights or not. So in certain circumstances, we can do that. However, we always want the administrator to have specific ownership rights just in case. Right?
No, I get. All right. The reason why I asked the question this way, Elena, because other places where we've worked previously, when you're audited, for example, if it's even payroll, even though they know that administrators have certain access, they like to know that the administrator don't have certain access to view certain things, but somebody else does. So it's not like you're fully locked out of the system.
Yes.
I just want to know that the administrator can't check certain things or change certain things.
And we can configure the security rather can be configured to do that. The security schema for the entire system can be configured to inform the administrator of what their privileges and rights are or are not. So the system security can be configured to remove certain privileges from the administrator environment.
Okay, cool.
So the answer is yes.
All right, thanks.
You're welcome.
Quick question. Can we create custom notifications?
Custom notifications can be created. Yes.
Pardon me?
Custom notifications can be created.
Okay, but that's a workflow that would have to implement it as.
Yes, that would be, so they're native notifications that can be done, but if you want to do, so we have done some custom notifications. So say, for example, this item that was assigned to officer has not been actioned in, say, 2 weeks, specifically, or this stuff like that. So we would have configured those notifications separately and distinct from the native out-of-the-box functionality. We have to configure that. So that can be configured.
Okay. All right, thanks.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Does Justin get a round of applause? Did he do a good job?
Yes, he does. He gets a good round of applause.
Okay.
Very well done, Justin.
Thank you.
Excellent work, Justin. It was long, almost 3 hours, right? 2.5 hours. All right. Okay, so thanks everybody. Shoot back your feedback form for Justin. And thank you all very much. So we will continue. All right.
All right, thanks.
Thank
Steve.
you. Thank you, guys.
Yes, yes.
Hi.
Yeah.
Hi.
Yeah.
I sent you a message in the chat.
Yes, I saw it. I wasn't sure if it was for me or not, but you wanted to chat. Or if we can chat right here now on this call, if you want. Everybody can drop off and if you're on here. you wanna do
Right,
that?
so it's
Go
the
ahead.
comment that I had. Following up on the training sessions. Are you able to go through them now?
Okay, sure. We want to go through those 26. Yes. Let me,
26, and I have some more that I'll
Okay.
email you right now.
Sure. So thanks everybody else. Anybody who wants to stay on can stay on. Justin,
we're-
of course, I know you want to go for lunch, so go ahead.
I'm off.
Okay, you're welcome, everybody. Let me pull up the,
All right.
okay.
All right. I guess you can start recording if you.
Okay, true. Let me, where is the thing? Hold on.
I'll stop sharing.